25 years and 3 weeks of local bowling on Cincinnati television. Good morning, everybody. I'm J.D. Hayworth, once again joined by Bo Hudipole. Bo in a kind of holiday motif, celebrating the first day of February, or perhaps looking forward to Valentine's Day, and she loves bowling, and we are at an interesting house today.
We certainly are. We're in beautiful Brentwood Bowl over on basically the middle of town, and we've got the East against the West today.
That makes sense. Kind of a central location for an East-West confrontation. And once again, with his expert analysis, ladies and gentlemen, it's David Newrath. Good morning, pal.
Good morning, J.D.
Are you ready for it today?
Let's go.
All right.
Well, I'm anxious.
Well, let's get going with it, and let's take a look at the combatants in our youth division this morning as we get things cranked up. Jim Hoskins, age 16. He is out of Goshen High School, a junior there. You see his average of 174, and he is facing off against a young man by the name of Dan Cantrell. Dan's a senior over at Oak Hills High School. His average 160, and it'll be interesting to watch these two young men as they square off here in the youth division as we go with the Youth King of TV Bowling. That's coming up right now for you on Channel 5.
Welcome to Youth King of TV Bowling, brought to you by Larosas. If you like pizza, you'll love Larosas. And by Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
And here we are back at the Brentwood Bowl, ready to start this East-West confrontation. And we kick things off here, David Newrath with young Dan Cantrell out of Oak Hills High School.
Dan is a lot of bowler, J.D. to say the least. Technically, he's very well schooled. His release isn't overpowering, but it's basically accurate. Just as I say, not overpowering, he topples them all.
Well, of course, the Newrath factor at work, but certainly impressive in the first frame as Dan Cantrell gets them all and fills the frame. And here's his opponent today out of Goshen High School, age 16, Jim Hoskins.
We might as well tell you right off the bat, you're going to be hearing a thumb-up pop with almost every delivery out of Mr. Hopkins, and that's because he is generating a lot of wrist roll, a lot of turn, and he's really got a firm grip on that ball. So when the thumb finally does fly out of there, it's sucking all the air out right with it.
Let's see if the pop will get the 10-pin for him. No.
When's our make the 10-pin tip coming up? That's a few weeks from now, I think.
Yeah, that is coming up pretty soon.
Hoskins finds himself at somewhat of a disadvantage here. How difficult is it to overcome that early?
Well, you know what? In a lot of cases, it might be all right to get it out of the way early. Your opponent didn't strike solidly. You threw a great shot at the 10-pin and then missed it. It shouldn't affect him, but again, we're talking younger players here, J.D. What would not affect the older players isn't really a rule here this morning.
Well, it is bright and early, and with this early start, Mr. Hoskins trying to come back with a spare here, get things on track.
Whoops.
Into the channel, he runs a risk in that delivery, David. Gets that real wide curve almost into the channel, and that time it just couldn't pop out.
Well, what are the few of the players are up against? The younger players watch television and they see some of the older guys really torquing it up and covering a lot of boards. That's great after a while. It's tough to have control over that ball at such an early age.
And a problem right there, pointing up what can happen with this particular sport. So many variables involved, and of course, not the least of which being footwork.
The young man is definitely embarrassed. He'd rather have anything happen than to do that. But again, we're 10 frames. We're playing here for total score, and technically still in the lead.
Let's see what Dan Cantrell can do here. Back.
Just like 8 and chop for 1 out for 9. It gives him 19 and 28 in the second. We're going to add his handicap in because he gets, I believe it's 14 pins, Humbo?
Yes, it is. It's 80% of the difference between the two averages, the 174 and 156.
Oh, and by the way, J.D., if we ever bowl, you do not get 80% of the difference.
Oh, come on, David. Here's Dan Cantrell again.
Going wide. The last frame has definitely unnerved him. His wrist roll is coming up over the top of the ball. We'll see if we can pick it up a little closer on his next 2 frames when he gets up. He's got a basically sound release, but he doesn't really generate the ball rotation that he'll be working on over the next 5 or 6 years.
Well, he picks up the spare there.
Before we get too long into the show, I'd like to remind everybody we are qualifying today at Saniville Lanes, and they can call Saniville if they'd like to make a reservation.
Right now, Jim Hoskins with a reservation in lane in frame 3.
Unbelievable.
He clears it out there.
What a great shot after coming back last frame, having some tough difficulties. Watch it here, over about the 17th board, out to about the 4th board. Now watch this ball come back, generating what power, what control. Awesome, awesome shot.
Let's see if he can duplicate that feat now. Frame 4. He really rides the channel, but this time without the desired effect, David.
Well, Bo touched on it before. The big sweeping hook is tough to control. Let's see if we can pick it up here on the replay. Now, the same ball that struck before, see, last time he was 17th board. Now, this is 18. Changes the trajectory, goes out to 3. Deflection, he was only off 3/4 of an inch on his targeting, and it winds up in disaster. So is the big hook really worth it, Bo? What do you think?
Well, you know, you run the risk of the ball going behind the pins, like this past delivery did, and personally, I think you need a little more action going from at a different angle.
Exactly. End over end roll with a little bit of a sweeping hook or a little bit of a sharp break at the end is fine. And how about the yesterday? History was made. 300 game, Pete McCordick, and he doesn't throw a very big bender.
That's right.
$100,000. We've got a car to give away, and that's just as good, I think.
In the adult division, we do.
Right.
Coming up a little bit later this morning.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later.
We'll see if somebody can do that right now. Let's see what Dan Cantrell does here, trying to pick up the spare. He does so in fine fashion, David Murath.
You know, it's really interesting. The leaders in the youth division right now at Saniville Lanes are from the same 2 centers that the youth are bowling from today, Eastgate and Stumps. They are developing some fine young bowlers in those 2 centers.
Dan spends his time at Stumps, as we pointed out earlier, an east-west confrontation, devoid of missiles. Instead, it's just bowling balls and pins we're going after today.
It's in the area.
And he nails it.
Very good. We're not going to see that hard hooking, rotating ball, but we're going to see a nice, accurate delivery right over the 10th board. The rotation is fairly clean on the last 20 feet. 10 pins in the pit. Every pin doing its job.
Well, every pin does its job, and to do our job, we have to pay some bills. We'll be back with more right after this for Larosas and Pepsi. Some of the folks up bright and early this morning at the Brentwood Bowl joining us for the Youth King of TV Bowling. And here comes Jim Hoskins, who finds himself in a bit of a hole here heading into frame 5.
The big sweeping hook almost left the 7-10 for him, J.D.
And the 7 remains up there, the pop and the hook, and let's see what he can do on a search and destroy mission here as he goes after the spare. Oh, he is in a bit of a dilemma here.
He certainly is. You know, he has so much more room to make an error because of the large hook that he is throwing.
38 pins to the deficit. Unbelievable the way that ball comes back on the back end, J.D.
Jim Hoskins pulls off the hook, gets the spare, now heads to frame 6. Everybody at his house bowls, his grandparents, his mom, his dad, and his sister. So everybody in the Hoskins household gets out and does some high rolling.
A great bowling family.
That ball, as we see him leave the 6-10, went high, almost directly through the nose. He hit the 20th board on that shot instead of the 17th. But again, we're going to go back to this, and we want to emphasize it for the younger people at home. If you're working with a coach and he's trying to teach you a roll that's going to generate a little more, that's fine. But believe me, if you don't have the accuracy first, the hook can wind up anywhere, and we're seeing evidence of that right now.
But Hoskins able to pick up the spare there. Now here comes Dan Cantrell. Had some problems early on. A slip up in one of the early frames. But David, I guess that's about the worst thing that could happen to a bowler, and he's been able to respond following that mishap.
He did it again. He dropped the ball. But look at this. An absolutely horrendous shot, but it goes back to something we've said for a long time. Direction is maybe 80 or 90% of this game. So if you can get the ball going in the right direction, you can be in the right area. We can look at the score, 98 technically for Mr. Cantrell, which gives him a 40-pin lead.
And he tries to build on that here, going after the spare.
Looks like he did not need his handicap today.
Not really.
Despite the problems, he comes up with a spare.
I'd like to be 40 pins up in all of my matches in the 6th frame. That would be a nice feeling.
It'd be great. You know, our high game on TV, high scratch game on TV by a youth bowler is going to warrant the bowler getting a week's paid tuition to the Professional Bowlers Camp. Right now, the youth that bowled last week, Robert Dashley, has the high scratch game of 219. Looks like he's got something to beat.
That's a nice game to try to beat. And I'll tell you what, that was a super ball. Absolutely perfect. This gentleman has to start striking and not stop until the game's over. Critical shot.
He comes up with the critical shot he needs.
When the pressure's on, we see what people are made out of. Let's take a look at it here. Watch this ball. Going into the 1-3, no deflection, no way. It goes more to the left, quite frankly. The 5-pin takes out the 9. The ball almost gets the 7. That's how strong it was.
Now trying to duplicate that perfection.
Has got to have it. It's in the area. It's in the area. This 10-pin gets slapped out here. 6-pin, 2nd pin from the right-hand side of your screen. Now watch it. Do a hacksaw job on the 10th. Right there, a little karate chop into the belly. Catch you later. 4 of the 6 that he needs.
The martial arts of bowling is explained by David Newrath.
Looks like they're loosening up.
That's right. Mr. Cantrell after some early difficulties. And you could see it on his face early. Likewise now you can see the determination.
I guarantee if we went down there right now and asked this young man how his ball feels on his hand, he wouldn't be too positive about it because he's being very tentative. He doesn't want to drop it again, but he's got the shot in the area almost every time.
Now you say he's tentative, but he's knocking down the pins.
Look at it here, JD. Right over the 10th board. Good roll. This ball's going to be a little high, but I'll tell you what. Talk about filling the pocket up. 3-pin, 2-pin goes to the wall, takes out the 4-7. This man is not out of here yet.
He's maintaining his 30-pin lead.
Now, what's that about it's never over? Or...
That's right. It ain't over till it's over, in the words of Yogi Berra.
But guess what? It's over.
Mathematically, it is over with the computer-like projections of Mr. Newrath. And checking the board here after we watch Mr. Hoskins try to pick up a very difficult spare.
The 210 is probably one of the tougher spares, especially for a gentleman that throws the big sweeping type of hook. You have about 1/4 of an inch on that pin, on the 2-pin, that you have to hit to slide it over. It's a combination shot into the 10. And when you're covering about 45 boards from left to right, it's tough to hit within 3/4 of an inch down. Good shot. Absolutely perfect.
That's what he wanted to see more of today. But it looks good when he hits it.
You know, every week we've talked about the little tykes coming out and starting the bowl in the bumper bowl and the shortened lane. Brentwood bowl has the shortened lane procedure where they put a rug out on the lane and the lane's shorter. 3 to 7-year-old bowlers can bowl in that, and I'm not sure if they got a new league starting, but the kids can come out here and try it.
You can see it there. He can finish with 164, but already without picking up a ball. Mr. Cantrell has salted this one away, and he gets the scholarship, Bo.
$200 scholarship to be used at the college, vocational school, or professional bowlers camp.
7-10 stays up. Jim Hoskins started bowling at age 5. And now a gentleman who started at age 8, Dan Cantrell, in to finish up what has become basically an academic exercise.
Exactly right. Mr. Hopkins, however, his average is 170, I believe we said on the beginning of the telecast. He finishes with 163. When you're not that far away from your average, first time on television, I think it's a very commendable job.
All right, baby.
Thank goodness it is over, because otherwise he would have a lot of trouble. The 4-9, perfect. Let's take a look at it here on the replay. The head pin, center of your screen, is going to go straight back. Watch it right there. Down the 2-pin, goes to the wall. Now, it normally comes off and kicks into the 4, but not today. The 4-9. The 9-pin is behind and to the right of the 4-pin. It's another combination. You got to slide it over.
So that finishes things up. And we'll come back to crown Dan Cantrell, our youth king of bowling for this week, right after this timeout for Pepsi's and Larosa. It's time to crown the king now. You've got to look at the clock that'll be given to our winner today, Dan Cantrell. David Newrath, hanging on to that clock over there. You don't want to break that thing, do you? Sure-handed, David. Do you have a little presentation there for Mr. Cantrell?
On behalf of the ball shop, Danny, we would like to tell you put on a heck of a show, and this is a beautiful trophy to put on your wall, and you had a little problems early. What happened?
I just got sweaty there and dropped the ball a few times.
Well, congratulations. Super game.
Thanks.
We're able to take a look at what you're able to do today, Danny, and like you said, a little trouble early, but you're able to come along here.
Well, I'm nervous and that. I just got sweaty. With the, I got around my hand and then just dropped it.
Well, you dropped it right in the pocket right there, so it worked okay as you're able to win this installment. And in lieu of a crown, we've given you the clock, and we also have for you right here a scholarship in the amount of $200. So we hope that'll come in handy for you.
Thanks a lot.
Any advice to the young kids out watching? Do you think they can pull it off too?
Just don't get nervous.
Don't get nervous. Kind of a tough assignment, Danny, but you're able to come through and pull it off. So congratulations to Dan Cantrell. Any other words of wisdom? How do you combat nervousness, David? Is there any way to get rid of it on TV?
A lot of hand conditioner might help, J.D. It's not one of those things you can control, but young man did a heck of a job for his first time on television. 200 game, very commendable. I think you're doing a swell job.
Thanks a lot.
So there you have the story, and we'll be back with the adults in just a minute as bowling continues on Channel 5.
Youth King of TV Bowling has been brought to you by Pepsi, the choice of a new generation, and by Larosas. If you like pizza, you'll love Larosas.